First, do you guys want to go through Math Powerland too? Just to kind of trace the origins? I mean, I do want to... We're going to mostly focus on Dubai, but I believe Math Powerland was the first... Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. On the timeline, wasn't Math Powerland the very first guy to come out with Flat Earth? I think he originally just talked about moon landing. And then he mentioned Flat Earth. Wow, that's interesting. Eric Petersman in the chat saying Eric Dubé said he has been in Maine for the last 3 years. That's weird. Next chapter says Eric moved back to the States. I wonder what facilitated that. That might... Yeah, I wonder. Does anybody know? Because wasn't he in Thailand for many, many years? Why would he randomly move back to Maine for 3 years and then back to Thailand? I mean, maybe... I mean, obviously there could have been a reason. Work, family, whatever. But his family... we'll actually get into it. His family's actually... And him... He's from Langley, Virginia. He's from the Langley, Virginia area CIA headquarters. And that's why it makes this so interesting. Out of all of the tens of thousands, like the 30 to 50,000 towns or incorporated areas in the United States, out of all those tens of thousands, he just happens to be from the one place where the CIA is primarily based. So that's kind of curious. Well, let's go through Math Powerland. Let's make this comprehensive, as we always do. Let's look at the I believe this is the very first Math Powerland, or this is one of the first interviews where he mentions the background and all of this, because, see, is it possible Math Powerland was kind of like a Bob Lazar, where they wanted to see what would happen? So regardless of whether it's true or not, regardless of whether there's flat or not, if part of the psychological operation was to be to gauge public reaction, I do wonder if he's kind of like the Bob Lazar, and then perhaps Dubé is the MK Ultra operative. The Manchurian candidate MK Ultra operative simply jumping when his controllers say jump. But let's look here. So there's no date here. It says between 2008 and 2011. 2008 would be crazy for Flat Earth rollout. But most of the Flat Earth content started popping up on the internet around 2015, like when it was getting popular. It was about 2015-ish. Because I actually remember seeing a lot of that. So, yeah, let's see what we got here. I actually haven't watched this in a really long time. I believe I actually saw this around 2015, this particular video.
Hi. You're obviously attracting a lot of attention these days with your NASA channel.
Yeah, NASA took out NASA television on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And we'd like to know a bit more about you. What's your background? What made you a sudden specialist?
Can anybody place the interviewer's accent? Is that Russian?
With the shape of the Earth.
I can't tell. Definitely sounds European.
Well, if I tell you it's a certain thing, and without having an instrument to prove it for over 1,000 years, let's say 500, I'll be generous, and there's no instrument or exploration of the surface, but you tell everybody it's that, if you're wrong, are you going to tell everybody?
Good question.
There's a lot riding here. Everybody who's got a degree in physics, the credibility of every university institution over the past 500 years, the concept of...
Is anyone else still finding it crazy if this was actually 2008? That would be crazy if this was 2008. I mean, even 2011 is crazy enough. I'm trying to really remember, was there some random Flat Earth stuff? Because if he uploaded, I don't know if he uploaded this to his channel in 2011. I'm not sure. I'm trying to really remember some of that Flat Earth stuff. Perhaps 2013. I mean, I don't think I saw the stuff in 2013. It was probably closer to 2015 for me, but...
Darwinism, evolution, where we're from. If they lie about the shape, everything falls apart. Even the notion of scarcity, especially if there's more real estate, more land, more resources, more oil.
And what about you? Where do you come from?
Your imagination.
Meaning, what's your background, your studies, what...
Self-taught. Hired realist painter. Started painting at the age of 3. So before my brain was gotten a hold of by curriculums in schools, I was already well on my way in understanding perspective on the horizon line. Like how to draw perspective, three-dimensional reality form. My goal at a very young age was to be able to reproduce paintings that looked like reality, like a camera took it. It's just this weird fetish I've always had since I was very young. When you would look at an image, I would have the photo right next to the image, and I really get off on confusing people whether they could decide. And I'd say, which one's the photo? And I would get off. It's been this freaky fetish I've always had to watch people's eyes sort of scramble. And it would come up closer, and I'd be, no, 6 feet. You have to decide from 6 feet. In this case, when it comes to a picture of the Earth from space, not only will no one ever go up in a rocket to check out if it does look like that, but it's more than the distance of 6 feet.
So you were hired by NASA not because of your knowledge in astronomy, just because of your talent at painting?
They enjoyed the way I painted things to make things look real, like my understanding of light. How I could take something that doesn't exist in reality. After a certain point, I surpassed needing photos, and I could basically construct things that don't exist, understanding how light would hit form. And they recruited me after a vernissage, after I graduated from political science intelligence at a Jesuit school in Canada, known as St. Francis Xavier. They recruited me at a university exhibition.
So now you have a connection to a Jesuit school openly admitted. Interesting. So in 2008 to 2011, I actually don't even remember. Obviously, the hardcore conspiracy crowd knew about the Jesuits, but Jesuits were not in the so-called mainstream conspiracy sphere. I think Jesuits were also kind of post-2015-ish. I don't know, what does everybody make of that? The Jesuit school connection.
And what was your job like?
Well, in the beginning it was like, we'd like to see some samples of textures and stuff like that, and they started really pushing me into using, different types of spill effects.
So, real quick on the timeline, I'm having AI peruse the Internet Archives. It actually says that Flat Earth was being discussed on Usenet groups. So various internet forums and Usenet. Who remembers Usenet? That was actually kind of popular back in the day. Is that still around? That'd be crazy. So Usenet? So it's still around? Huh. Usenet news groups. Huh. Interesting. So AI scoured the internet, and it's saying it was around in the 90s. So, like I said, I remember geocentric Earth being discussed on various forums. But, man, I do not remember Flat Earth Usenet groups. I wonder, is anybody still around from back then? I mean, I would imagine it would not have been the younger crowd. So if you were older, like quite a bit older in the 90s, I don't know, maybe you're still not alive today, or you're in a nursing home and you're not on the internet right now. But if you are, If anybody was around back in the Flat Earth Usenet days from the 90s, it would be interesting to have anybody from back then do an interview or share information on exactly how much of it was discussed and what was the catalyst, like what, you know, because I mean people made jokes, yeah, the earth is, you know, what did they say about the earth being flat? Was it just satire, like, yeah, and the earth is flat? Like, that kind of joke's been around, like a sarcastic type of joke. Like, yeah, and I'm the Queen of England or whatever, like in that kind of style. People used to say that forever, probably in the 80s, and actually probably for decades and decades and decades. But when was it first seriously discussed as a conspiracy theory? Like, what year in the 90s? And does anybody have any archived actual posts? Because there's just some references to it being discussed, but I don't see an actual archive of the posts. I will try to find it, but I don't know. So apparently they were alt-culture news groups, scientific skepticism, so they were alt.sci.skeptic, also talk.origins. So supposedly it was pretty active, and then it became less active by 2000, which is interesting, isn't it? So I don't see exact numbers here, but they were saying there were hundreds, if not thousands. So there were potentially thousands of members or people discussing, not necessarily believers, but people discussing it. And then supposedly by 2000, the numbers were less, in the hundreds. And then the Flat Earth Society disbanded in 2001. I mean, I just find this very, very interesting, because if this is a Flat Earth PSYOP, or controlled, this is all controlled ops, and the Flat Earth Society would have been controlled the whole time. So, you know, they had their whatever, magazines or whatever. In the 70s, they had 3,500 members between the 70s and the 80s. So they put out flyers and publications, Flat Earth News, like a tabloid. It was $6 to $10 in the US. So, I'm actually kind of curious. So, yeah, apparently Charles K. Johnson, the leader of the Flat Earth Society, 3,500 memberships, but then there was a fire at his house in 1997 which destroyed all records and contacts of the members. And then his wife, who helped manage the membership database, died shortly thereafter, and then he died himself March 19th, 2001. And then in 2004, Daniel Shenton resurrected the Flat Earth Society. There was also Thomas Dolby, who put out an album. Do people know this? Thomas Dolby put out an album in 1984. Does anybody know the name? Well, the name of the album was called The Flat Earth, and it was put out in 1984. That's a very interesting year to put out an album called The Flat Earth. This is the cover of the album. Kind of weird. Make of it what you will. So he put out this album in 1984. So it's an English new wave synth pop album. It got to number 14 on the UK albums chart. And the first single, Hyperactive, peaked at number 17 on the UK singles chart. This is kind of wild. This is kind of this is mainstream. This is mainstream, and it even got to number 35 on the US Billboard 200. It got to number 35. This is crazy. So it's the original LP. Side A was Dissidents, interesting name for a track, and Flat Earth, and then Scream Kiss. Side B was White City, Mulu the Rainforest, I Scare Myself with Dan Hicks. And then number 7 was Hyperactive. Interesting. So this album actually got people to look into Flat Earth and the Flat Earth Society with that name. So that's actually pretty curious. Pretty curious. That's quite curious. Huh. What does everybody think about that? So that got people interested in the Flat Earth Society, and the guy that resurrected it credits the album for getting interested in it. Huh. So it officially relaunched October 2009. So that is interesting. I wonder if that was in a response to Math Powerland and his videos in 2008. I think most of them were closer to 2011, but then you had the Canadian Flat Earth Society, which coincidentally established November 8th, 1970 by philosopher Leo Ferrari. I wonder if there's any relation to the car company. Writer Raymond Fraser and poet Alden Nolan. And it was active until when? Until 1984. In 1984, the Canadian Flat Earth Society folds, and then this UK album comes out. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, the coincidence stack here already is so high. I mean, this is so crazy. I mean, this is just weird. This is weird. But anyway, let me catch up on some comments here, and then we'll continue with Matt Powerland and then get into Eric Dubay. Eric Petersman says, was his NASA employment ever verified? That's a great question. Somebody asked that before, and I remember it being addressed, and I don't remember the answer. Let me look that up real quick. So, the first thing I found was just an anonymous post on Reddit from Ditto is Lit. Make of it what you will. We are simply examining information. I'm not claiming it's true or untrue. I grew up near Matthew Boylan, aka Math Powerland, like a minute walk from his family home. His mother was a widow, I believe. He also has a sister close to my age. They didn't specify what the age was. He and his mother were often overheard yelling at each other, and from what I could tell, had somewhat of a rocky relationship. Matt is an incredible artist. I had the opportunity to see him painting in their backyard like he would often do, painting a photorealistic train, which was incredibly good and blew my mind as a young kid. After finishing school, he went on to dabble in stand-up comedy, and it can still be found on YouTube, poking fun at Quebec culture from the POV of an English-speaking Quebecer. He also has a bit where he would go on about how he could brainwash people of the most outrageous stuff by repetition and gaslighting. It would take a lot of searching to find these clips, but I do remember seeing them in the early 2010s on YouTube. That's an interesting topic. I do believe he indeed had contracts with NASA, but it was for touching up for photos they wanted to publish or sell. I don't have any first-hand knowledge of it, so take that with a grain of salt. He does seem to have some far-out beliefs, but I believe the whole flat earth thing was more of a troll to prove his brainwashing theory more than something he had concrete beliefs about. I know this is an old post, but it came up when I was searching if he was still around. The last I've seen of him was painting floors and murals in an abstract action painting style, and this post was from 2025. So that's interesting. Let me see what else I can find on any kind of verification of NASA. So he was not listed in any NASA employee directories. So a couple people have looked into it. They just posted that he was a freelance artist who did work for NASA. So that's interesting. So he was supposedly a 1099 contractor. So he would not be listed in any full-time employee directories. But yeah, to date, I don't think he uploaded any of his forms. Yeah, so I don't see any verification or documents. A couple of sites listed him as an ex-NASA operational graphics manager, which is a very specific title. Yeah. So there you go. I don't know where that came from, but that's a very specific title. So, as far as I know, nobody has produced any official documentation. Next chapter says, who is this guy? You're talking about Matt Powerland? Or Matt Boyland, rather? Next chapter says, yo, watch that nursing home talk. Well, I'm just saying, somebody in, like, drastically assisted living in deteriorating health, their priority might not be to keep up with Flat Earth, even if they did discuss it on Usenet forums in the 90s. Jason says, wasn't Matt Powerland in a TV sitcom or something? I don't think so. Stephanie says, photo or painting act he did actually woke me up in 2015. Jeff says, I'm always suspicious whenever artists work on projects. I consider them part of the opposition. Comedian is an artist, just in my opinion. Eric Petersman says, in one of his stand-up videos, he'd use a projector and show two pictures of planets and Earth side by side. Ask the audio which was a picture and which one is painting. He's definitely talented.
Stuff like that, they already had an idea, like, they seem to already have this system of textures or ways to make textures. So they asked me to, I guess I was just filling in on somebody else's work, like a predecessor who went into retirement. And once in a while I would get calls from a gentleman who was the head of the graphics department, and he'd ask me to change the color on things or the lighting. And then what they would do is they would send me like a drawing or an architectural drawing of like an instrument that might be scouting the surface of a celestial body, be it a moon or a planet. And then they would ask me to transpose these objects on the textures, and they would give me certain directions of like the light is at this angle, this time of the day, at this intensity, and then I would have to make the shadows congruous to the information they would make, and I'd have to make it look real.
And can you explain to us what happened between your steady job that you just described and...
It wasn't steady. It was on and off, and it was freelance.
Okay. And what happened between that period and now? What is the turning point that made you totally dissociate yourself from what you were working for?
Was about a year after I...
So nobody knows who this is interviewing him? I mean, if that's a Russian accent, I do find that a little curious, to say the least. But
I met some of the people I was working with over the phone and on computer at a function, and I think it was kind of like somewhat of an initiation to this division of NASA. And there was one gentleman there that didn't work for NASA, but he was like a consultant for the U.S. Defense Department, GPS, and NASA. And he was a physicist and a painter. Very interesting combination. He was a well-known astrophysicist and a photorealist painter. Most people in the mainstream know him as a well, not even the mainstream, but in the physics circles, know of him as a scientist, but they didn't know he had this knack of photorealistic painting. And it's something they kind of kept under wraps. With me, however, I was, a very good photorealist painter. I would say I was better than him, and I was better at recreating textures that don't exist. And there was a party at somebody's cottage in the Hamptons, and the power went out, and it was about 1 o'clock in the evening, and there was one gentleman who was friends with this guy. He was this consultant for the U.S. Defense Department. Now, this guy was basically a friend of one of my superiors and a colleague.
so what I'm finding right now is that Matt Boylan supposedly had a YouTube channel called Guy Waking Up in 2008 to 2009. And those channels were all deleted or removed, and the latest archives are from 2011, verified from him. So that's actually kind of interesting, isn't it? So I wonder if that was like if this is all a concerted effort PSYOP, I wonder how much testing it underwent in the 90s and early 2000s, and then the official rollout was 2011. Culminating in the 2015 explosion all over the internet. There was a couple of articles actually written. There's the Flat Earth Phenomenon on YouTube by John C. Paolillo on firstmonday.org, and in this it claims that there's nothing, no videos before 2011. Before Matt Boylan's 2011 videos, there were no videos. So just mentions on forums, etc. So that's interesting. That would make Matt Boylan the first official Flat Earth video maker.
And basically, they started to... I think the conversation started turning around like... something was about GPS coordinates weren't working or something concerning Antarctica, and so then he made a crack. This gentleman was working for the boat as a consultant, so it was like, I was like, well, so you should go out there and just and check this thing out, see if it's still functional. And then somebody made a quip to the effect that, well, if he goes up that far, he ain't coming back. And I asked, like, what do you mean, like, well, why wouldn't he come back? It's like, if he can go back on his, because GPS doesn't reach that far. And then I was like, well, why doesn't GPS reach that far? I mean, is it too cold? And it's like, it's because it's flat. And they started laughing. They all started laughing. And my superior had quite a weird smirk on his face. He was watching me to see how I would take all this. And there was no lights on, and they had candles that they just lit. And then basically, he took out some chalk, and it was like a cement sort of plank floor of some sort. And he started drawing out the Earth, all the continents exactly, but how they function, everything, physics, science, how everything we understand in movement of energy and objects in this new or hidden science, hidden from the public, how everything is caused by temperature, as opposed to like this very evasive notion of energy with Einstein and Hawking, that, you know, there's 3 ingredients to make a universe: energy, mass, and space. It was temperature. Temperature was why there's mass and energy.
And you believed him right away?
It made a lot of sense. But he basically started to avert everything. And they were kind of laughing, but they were they were listening to him. He seemed to be like kind of like this guy who was just this weird, I thought he was some sort of nut that these guys, like, he's basically just like picking apart everything that they know or that they say every day in the office. He was basically explaining the flat earth and how it works. And he literally drew the UN flag. And I thought this is a joke on me. This is some sort of initiation to see if I'm stupid or to see if I'm going to buy this. I thought they were fucking playing with me to see if they could convince me it was flat. And what was creepy about the whole thing is that they were more laughing at me for not getting it. It never went back to it being a ball with these gentlemen that night. It might have been that at the office the next day, in front of everybody else, you know, the underlings, but, and then for weeks, I couldn't think, everywhere I went, every time I saw a picture of the Earth, it was like just a logo, it was a painting, it was a graphic. And then I started to scrutinize the actual images of the Earth they claim are photos. And it just started looking silly, like a cartoon. Like, why is the water so blue if it's reflecting the blue atmosphere, but I could still see the brownness of Africa? Like, wouldn't I be seeing Africa through the blue atmosphere? Like, why is the green and the brown of continents so clear with the blue of the water when the water of the oceans is just reflecting the blue atmosphere? And how come the whole thing, being 3 parts water, isn't reflecting the blackness of space? Like, I started seeing all these flaws. And the more and more I tried to prove this guy wrong, or just to find out if they were joking or pulling my leg, the more I realized they weren't joking.
So what does everybody think? So what are the options here? He's telling the truth, but just because he's telling the truth about the story doesn't mean these NASA people are telling him the truth, right? So if he's not lying here, then that's what they told him, similar to Bob Lazar. And so he's simply repeating what he believes to be true, even if it's not true. Or it is true, or this whole story's not true, and he made all of this up, regardless of the shape of the Earth. Let's do a poll. What does everybody think about Boylan so far? So the poll is up. Is he telling the truth? Is he lying? Or are you too triggered to answer? Which would be very understandable, given this is one of the most triggering topics ever. Jeff says, I can't shake the feeling we were allowed to know what we know. It seems a bit like all the revelations are still controlled in some way. Yes. I need to do an interview with Austin Whitsitt, because I mentioned before, I asked him on one of his lives in the chat if he thought the rollout was intentional. And he kind of said that it obviously was very suspicious. The exact rollout, obviously, if this is a CIA psyop, obviously it would be a multi-pronged rollout. So you might potentially have a Bob Lazar type. You might potentially have an MKUltra Manchurian candidate type, and anyone and everyone in between as well. So wow, 71% think he's telling the truth. 0% think he's lying. 29% too triggered to answer. Justin Johnson says everything is by design 100% scripted. And you know what's crazy? Even if that's true, it still doesn't tell you what's true or untrue, right? So if it's part of the script to roll out misinfo, it's part of the script to roll out true information. I mean, but that doesn't necessarily, even if it's all part of the script and all the world's a stage, it's still that's, I mean, it is important to know that. What do you think the masses are not allowed to know? See, the weird thing about Tartaria. Okay, let's get crazy here. Let's get mind shocking. So Flat Earth seems highly suspicious in the way it was let out of the bag, per se. Tartaria strikes me as something entirely different. Because all of the buildings can clearly be visible. You know, the photographs that were always around. It almost seems like they did not want the true narrative of Tartaria out. So they co-opted it. So when they started noticing that people were noticing, it was just disinfo, co-opted dump all across the internet. To try to muddy the waters of the mud flood Tartaria. And you can kind of see this in my series, The True History of the World. I only did 2 episodes so far, but I do have like another 3 coming. The whole Tartaria thing seems like an entirely different situation than the Flat Earth thing. Justin Johnson says discernment is imperative. Ryan Shee says, why tell us? Is it to distract us from something else? Well, yeah, they usually have more than one target, so let's not fall for false dichotomies. It seems like there's more than one goal for a lot of this stuff. Jeff U1P says, mixing truth with sneaky programming is highly effective and less detectable. Yes. But also, look at the response to it. Like, the response to Flat Earth was completely different than the response to Tartaria. It's just really interesting. And who remembers that series? Was it Survivors of Atlantis or whatever? That seemed to be kind of a catalyst for the overdrive in trying to control the Tartaria narrative. Ryan Shea says, did they do the same thing with Flat Earth? People were figuring it out, so they co-opted it. Well, in recent years, it's weird. When YouTube kind of exploded on YouTube in later years, like post-2015. So did they control it? So was Math Powerland a test in 2008? Then they terminated the test, and then they rolled it out officially in 2011. And then in 2015, once it got super, super, super popular, they had to make sure they still controlled it. So even if they were the ones that rolled it out, they didn't want like all of these people that were not under their thumb. So then they want to own the people on both sides, both the flat earthers and the anti-flat earthers. That's one of the theories. CJ says hiding flat earthers is the number one priority. I don't know about that. I mean, it seemed like up to a certain point, Like, once it started getting out of control, maybe they didn't want it that out of control. Like, look what happened with Bob Lazar and the UFO stuff. I mean, it was crazy popular, but it didn't take everything over. When did they, according to Mark Sargent, his words, they took down the scoreboard for searches on Flat Earth. They took the whole scoreboard down. So when every single kid is looking up Flat Earth on their phone in school, perhaps they didn't want it to go that crazy, and then they needed to rein it in. They wanted it just Bob Lazar level, with mostly adults, older kids. They didn't want practically the entire school-age population to be discussing Flat Earth full time. It's actually calmed down a little bit, I would say, in the past few years. Not a lot, but a little bit. Like, even if there are more flat earthers, like, it's been a little more calm in the mainstream, comedians making fun of it, like it being mentioned at almost every podcast. Like, even if there are more total members, more flat earthers in their, smaller communities, it seems like it's calmed down a little bit in the mainstream. Justin Johnson says, the people who woke us up to Flat Earth are in the club. Good cop, bad cop. We are living a script since a reset, his story. I still don't want to fall for false dichotomies. I think there are genuine people out there. Wow, that'd be wild. CJ says they want to move people into underground bunkers that think they are on Mars. I haven't heard that one before. That's an interesting extension. Is that some kind of extension of Bluebeam? And we never really talked about breakaway civilization, because there is a subset of conspiracists. They were a lot more popular before Flat Earth that actually believed that there were people physically living on Mars right now. And if Mars is a realm on this plane of existence that's simply being reflected above in the sky, perhaps that is true, but yeah. I mean, this is pretty crazy. This is pretty crazy, but I do think it's very interesting. Wow, that was in the Epstein files? Wow, we gotta do more episodes. We gotta do more episodes on that. I mean, I saw a lot of cloning stuff in the Epstein files, but...
What do you think you were the one that they spoke about? That they told that to?
I think there was some projects coming up down the pipeline. Mars, a few things that they wanted to know. I think the whole thing was to see how I would play ball. Like, let him in on it. He'll ask more questions, and we'll study his reaction. And if he has the proper reaction to maybe be part of the deception, we'll let him in on the next project, the next contracts that we want him to falsify, the next images we need him to counterfeit.
How many people were told the same information in the
These
company?
guys were all privy to it, but these guys were all high-placed people at NASA and the U.S. Defense Department.
Any other colleagues of your level that were aware also?
No. Everybody at my level was doing graphics, doing prototypes, and just, they would never believe. And what am I going to do? I'm going to tell them? Well, then they're going to tell them. So I was really alone in this situation.
So, maybe he's a really good actor, but the way he answered that question kind of seemed genuine. Because he didn't just say yes or no, and he didn't make up a bunch of other stories. He recited, if he's not lying, he's reciting what his thoughts about it are.
Situation. And I did more and more research, and then every time I came up to where to prove an equation, it was supported by an event that was created through mass media caused by NASA. Be it the moon landing, be it this, and then it was the moon rocks, and then Van Brouwer going to Antarctica to pick up rocks like 2 years before the first moon mission. Then the rocks just looked like, and then it came out a couple of years ago that John Glenn, when he went on this world tour to sort of like do a PR campaign, hey, we went to the moon, and he gave rocks to the Queen of England, and she gave those rocks to the museum in Amsterdam, and up until a couple of years ago, they found out that was just petrified wood. It wasn't a rock from the moon at all. So, I mean, like, everything's starting to come out now, but it's said once in the newspaper, almost like it's a revelation of the method, a he on everybody. But
that's also curious. He's talking about revelation of the method in 2008. Not that wasn't known. I mean, obviously, Bill Cooper talked about it. I don't remember Alex Jones saying that exact phrase. but Bill Cooper did.
And how did you deal with having the information in your head and continuing to work on the projects you were hired for?
Well, after a while, extensions changed, numbers were dead, and I was not acknowledged. I didn't get through. I mean, even people I worked with, the agency said that they never even worked for them. So the whole thing looks like it's just like, so I look crazy. You know what I mean? Like I'm telling you, like the guys I work with, when I called back, you know, didn't, like the agency saying they never worked for them, which I pretty much imagine is what they're saying right now.
This is also interesting because he's leaning in, making it even more personal. Usually when people are lying, they'll maintain their posture or even lean back and away. He's coming even closer so you can see his eyes even more clearly. Now, either he's a really good liar who's studied all of this psychology, or he's telling the truth. Ryan, she asks, where is this guy now? So yeah, supposedly he has not been active or online in anything. Stephanie says, Math eventually spiraled with personal problems with his ex-wife several years ago, and I think his videos were put up on purpose to make him appear unstable. Jake, Flat Earth Jake mentioned something about that as well. That Powerland kind of seemed a little bit unhinged and that nobody gave him credit, and he was really the first one. And Mark Sargent also talked about it, because I think the documentary Beyond the Curve or whatever, they originally wanted Math Powerland, maybe, and then he either declined. There was some kind of issue, and then Mark Sargent kind of basically took over where Math Powerland stopped. I wonder if Jake would be willing to do an interview with me, because we did go back and forth a little bit on his comments. He thinks Jake, Flat Earth Jake, or formerly Flat Earth Jake, I think, does he call himself Jake the A-hole now? It's kind of weird. Because he had some really logical takes. Some of his videos were the first I've seen. Powerland and Flat Earth Jake were some of the very first Flat Earth videos I ever saw. I think I saw those before Mark Sargent's. And, yeah. And Jake seems like a really cool guy. Like, he plays music at nursing homes. Yeah, again, with the nursing homes, they keep coming up. I mean, he seems like a genuinely good guy. So, I don't know what happened with him and Powerland, but...
What they were going to say about me was the same thing. I mean, go ahead. Call him up. Ask if Matt Boylan, the comedian, ever drew paintings for NASA.
Alright, so... I actually just found an archived video here. It's labeled the first Flat Earth video by Math 2010 of the NASA channel. So let me play this video. Supposedly the first video was actually 2008, 2009, so I don't know if those were the comedy videos, and they weren't specifically Flat Earth, but here is this one, which was labeled 2010. So let's see this one.
nebulous texture here. The sun rising, our sun, the moon of Ipapopa, a distant moon they just discovered in 2008 off of Jupiter. It's like the 14th moon. And this is our sun rising Ipapopa.
Okay, hold on, my camera.
You get it?
What's the planet name?
Ipapopa.
Ipapopa?
New they found it. Okay, so this is me with the light.
Ready?
I don't know, call me crazy, but there seemed to be, like, just the body language and the demeanor of Math Powerland is completely different than Eric Dubay. Call me crazy. Eric Dubay kind of seems to match an MK Ultra programmed individual, whereas Math Boylan just seems very genuine. Is he the Bob Lazar of the situation? I don't know, there's just something very genuine about him. As opposed to Eric Dubay. Eric Dubay literally seems to be reading from a script in like this weird monotone. And like it's almost like he doesn't match the script. So some people allege someone else wrote the script. And of course, the graphics that he had in his videos were pretty impressive at the time. I mean, they were better than anything on like National Geographic or Discovery Channel. Like, for some of the animations, they were really incredible. Like, where did he have the budget to do that? We're not talking about now with AI and all of that. This was well over a decade ago. Justin Johnson says he's Jake the Awake now. And Don't Shoot the Messenger says Matthew Boyland is still posting on Instagram. What does he post about? Yeah, I don't have Instagram.
Take a zoom in there. Okay, if you want to be.
That is really good, though. Look at that.
Hold on. This is rough.
This is definitely an old video, because he wouldn't be having that playing with all the copyright now. There he is.
I mean, we could really get the lighting exact, eh?
Oh yeah.
There he is, obviously, here. CJ says there's all kind of books published exposing flat earth from the 1800s even. Yeah, but it's a lot harder to know about the existence of those books without the internet. CJ says the very first movie ever made was about going to space. Was it? I don't think it was. Was it the Great Train Robbery? You're talking about the first feature film? Which movie? So I don't know if this was part of the original video, because if it was, then it probably would have been closer to 2011 then, but it says 2010 in this label. But yeah, so Math Powerland made those types of videos and the comedy stand-up, and supposedly they were the very first Flat Earth videos ever made on the internet.